Have you heard the James Clear quote, "You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems"? Now, I love this quote. I am a systems person, but I actually want to share today why this idea, as an example, there are many, but this idea can actually keep you stuck in your old patterns of stop and start, perfectionism, being hard on yourself, falling off track, not knowing how to get back on, struggle, trying to do better, be better, etc. Why this idea and most of what you read in the self-help, self-development world doesn't actually support you in creating loving, soul-honoring, sustainable change in your life. So I'm going to say more about that shortly. First, I want to talk to you about what I call old self, new self, true self. Okay, so the reason I believe that this will help you is I think it will normalize some of what you're experiencing. It can give you a sense of what to expect if you are a seeker, if you are a growth-minded human, if you're somewhere in the messy middle season of life, and I'm using that broadly because you might be 35 and really feeling this call to change. You might be in your 70s, and it doesn't matter where you are, but this when you start to feel this sense of this isn't freedom, this isn't working, it can be deeply uncomfortable. And so wherever you are in your life, if you're feeling feelings like that, then I'm speaking to you. So old self, new self, true self. So when we're in old self, what that means is we are operating largely unconsciously. We don't yet have a lot of self-awareness. And in terms of the my hope map graphic or seasonal living, you're likely in sort of the first spring and summer season of your life. You're trying to figure out who you are in the world, and you are operating in sort of the patterns you learned to that you learned that this is how you get your needs met, this is how people affirm you. You may just be handed a cultural script that, you need to be a good girl or you need to go get an education. And sort of like we're not doing yet a ton of questioning necessarily. We're playing these roles, and successful or not isn't what we're talking about. We're just talking about everybody goes through this season of life. Okay. It's not bad or wrong necessarily. It's just that at some point, it no longer works in a healthy way for you. But that's also where, if you're somebody who's listening to me, you come to my work at all, then there's a really good chance that in that old self, you do a lot of people pleasing, performing, peacekeeping. You may be ruled by a mean inner critic, perfectionist patterns, even if you're not conscious of that's what they are. You may do a lot of numbing and trying to outrun your feelings. You don't know what to do with them. And if you're a big feeler, a highly sensitive human, it may be actually feel unsafe in your body. And you weren't taught, most of us were not never taught how to address emotions, how to feel them, be with them, name them, what to do with them. So if you're in the middle season of life right now, you're learning how to do this for the first time and then teaching your children, talking about it with your sisters, your friends, etc. Not just sisters, brothers, siblings, friends, people. Um, okay, if you're listening to me and you happen to be a lot younger, then lucky you, you may have been growing up in the era where your parents had more access to this type of knowledge, and maybe they started practicing with you at a younger age. So that's wonderful. But You may have noticed that you lived in with a lot of low self-esteem, lots of self-doubt. Maybe you were just going along doing your best and you just felt really powerless. Powerless internally, powerless externally. A lot of shame, a lot of judgment, but no sense of what to do about it. Okay, now people come to my work around this new self phase of life. Now, the new self, I think of our life as women in particular, because I work with women or people who identify as women, somewhere around what I call the midlife crossroad, which begins, it doesn't mean that's where you arrive here, but it begins somewhere around 40 years old. Now, this may shift because life evolves, humans evolve, but so far throughout my life, throughout my work, this is true. So, somewhere around that 40-year mark, we arrive at a crossroad, a choice point. We have, there are times early or before 40 where we go through shifts, some big life transformations. And there are times after the midlife crossroad that we also go through significant life changes and transformations. Sometimes they're wanted, sometimes they're just natural phases, and sometimes they're unwanted, but we're thrown into them. Okay, but this is just one of the biggest choice points where, or crossroads, where we arrive, and there's this sense of knowing to a certain degree that what you have been living or how you have been living is not what you want moving forward. So that's all I'm going to say about that for now. But there's some awareness that this isn't working. I don't like this. I don't want to move forward. And coupled with very often not knowing how you could create something different, maybe not believing you deserve something different, maybe seeing that other people are finding ways to create positive, healthy change, but you probably can't do it. Maybe you believe that you don't even deserve something more loving or kind or whatever. So you can be full of self-doubt, full of uncertainty, because it is any crossroad or significant choice point really is meeting with uncertainty. You don't know what you don't know, but there's something inside of you that does know, something that is calling you forward. So the women in my work, some do arrive around 40, but others come around 50, 60, and 70 years old because it really depends on when you had the capacity, when you had the resourcing, when you had access, when you found my work or, somebody else's work that invited you into this type of relationship. So it's not more and faster is better. It's whenever you are able to recognize that call and say yes to stepping into something new, the change begins. The second you say yes, as afraid as you are, as wobbly as you are, whatever, the second you say yes, you step into new self. Okay. Before I forget, I do want to say that I'm going to talk about this. It's going to sound like it's a linear process. It actually isn't an entirely linear process. There is an element of linearity. I don't know if that's a word, but like in terms of we have to go through a certain amount of life before we can arrive at that new self. And we have to go through those murky waters of growth before we can ever get to what I'm calling true self. So there is sort of this process. However, that new self, true self, and even like elements of old self or yeah. We cycle as we're moving through the cycles of our life. We're cycling also through this sort of cycle of becoming, where we're unconscious, we get more awareness, and then we practice. And so what that means is that it doesn't matter how much work we do. There is no end point. This is a full, beautiful life. You're going to be practicing as long as you have breath within you. And what can happen if you think that this is actually a one and done deal? So once you're through this messy practice, you're done. You've hit the end point. Then you actually tip into great despair and discouragement when all of a sudden you feel like you've gone backwards. You meet a new challenge or a new season of life and you're like, why am I struggling again with like this inner self-talk that isn't very kind, or why am I feeling so vulnerable? I thought I had already like built capacity around whatever. And it's because you're going deeper, not wider. It's because, yes, now you have all of this tools and wisdom and skill and strength and self-knowledge that you have developed, and you're going to use all of that to meet this new season of life or this new life experience. Okay, so there is this cycling as we move through our year and through our life. Okay. Okay, so now new self. New self is actually one of the hardest places to be. I want you to hear me. Once you are open and awake enough to hear this call, and you have the bravery and capacity, because I want to say that sometimes we don't have capacity, but it doesn't mean we're not brave, but we're attending to other needs or other experiences, and we don't have room right now for this type of work. So, but when you are in a place of enough capacity, because again, you could be totally afraid, you don't love yourself, etc. Like there's, it's okay. So you're in this place, but you've had the bravery enough to say yes. I don't even know what I'm saying yes to, but there's something that's calling me forward. You say yes, you step over a line. Now, all of a sudden, you're stepping into these murky waters of growth and becoming. And I will shortly tell you about another resource that can take you deeper into what I'm talking about. For now, I'm trying to keep this simple enough. So this is where awareness begins to really grow, but it doesn't match your current skill level. And skill level, I'm using as a very broad term for inner capacity, self-compassion, the ability to show up through fear or discomfort. Like there's so much stuff here, and I'm just calling that skill level, okay? But your awareness is now outpacing your current skill level or ability to change, to create something new, to be kinder to yourself. You don't have yet the knowledge, the practices or habits or seasonal rhythms that will support you, etc. Okay, so how uncomfortable is that? You can see your patterns. Like, let's say that you're yelling at people in your life, okay? You're shoving down your emotions and then you're having these outbursts. Well, before you were just doing it and sort of moving forward, okay? Maybe you knew like, oh, this isn't really great, but most of it, you were just mostly going through the motions. And all of a sudden, you're so conscious of what you're doing and the harm to you, harm to your relationships, etc. But you keep doing it. You don't know how to interrupt yet. So this is where just think of something from your own life. It could be something else. It could be an addictive pattern. Like let's say that you're doing your shopping as a soothing tool and you're tens of thousands of dollars in debt. Let's say that you really want to grow a business, but fear and vulnerability are so loud and your inner critic is so mean that it's like you try to dip your toe in and then you hide under the covers. So whatever it is, and I could throw out like a million examples, but you think of something from your own life where it's like, okay, now you have this awareness, awareness of this pattern, awareness of this, yeah, I'll just say stick with pattern, but you don't know how to interrupt or disrupt and create a new pattern. Maybe, and then along the way, still in this new self, you start to, this is where typically we start to buy courses and read books and go to therapy and gobble up information and listen to the podcast and scroll on Instagram. We're looking for answers, we're looking for solutions to not only help calm the storm inside of us, but also create, practical solutions. But we're in this messy stage, and this is where actually shame and self-judgment and your inner critic can get really loud, even louder than before. Now, this is normal, uncomfortable, and it can feel so vulnerable. But it is really important to know that the reason these things get even louder is because you are risking. You're not staying in the familiar, in the comfort zone. And we know using the term comfort zone doesn't actually mean that our lives are comfortable. There could be a lot of internal pain, but it's familiar, right? It's there are neural pathways that have been forged through decades of practice. This is familiar, it's known, so it's more certain. But as soon as you say yes to something new that you can't see yet and you don't even know for sure if it's possible for you, you've just opened yourself up to risk. Okay, you've just stepped into uncertainty, and that can feel scary. It can feel shaky. So it makes sense that there are these parts of you that get really loud. They start to clamor for attention. So in my work, one of the things we do is normalize what's happening, but also help you learn what to do with this noise, okay? Because if you have no tools or no understanding of this is normal and I can do something about this, I can help calm the storm, not remove it, not eradicate it, but be less afraid of it and recognize what's happening and how to respond to it with compassion, then this is where fast people will retreat, isolate, withdraw, quit. Okay. There could be a lot of false starts. There could, and then that just amplifies judgment and all the things. So, this new self process is the most vulnerable place to be. Now, but think about it. Okay, here's an example. An example that probably feels less threatening, less risky. You know how if you've ever been decluttering something, let's say you're going through your kids or your closet, clothing, and sorting and getting rid of and reorganizing, whatever. Well, or you're going through your garage, whatever it is, you know that often you create a lot of mess before things get organized and neat and tidy, right? Anytime, you're doing something new, or let's say you're moving. Imagine when have you moved the last time? You have to pull everything out of cupboards and drawers and closets, and it looks like chaos before things get tucked away, moved, and then eventually sorted and put into place. You know that that's a messy process, right? Just pause and think about it, okay? Because I want you to really get this. This matters. This really, really matters. So that's a less threatening example. Anytime we're learning how to do something new, anytime we're saying yes to change, whether we're creating a new system, a new way of being, a new way of self-talk, a new talking to ourselves, a new way of relating to others. First, it looks messier before it kind of starts to reorganize. But because we don't do enough truth telling around what to expect, it feels very isolating, very shameful, and scary. So we need to know what's coming. We need to know that we're not doing it wrong, but we also need to know how to tend to ourselves so that we can be in the discomfort of the messiness and hold on and keep inching our way forward so that we can get to sort of the calmer waters and the reorganization phase. All right, I am going to pause momentarily and tell you about something. Just bear with me here because I want to pull this up and just read from my screen. Okay, so I have a free resource to give you. It's called Rewilding, Quiet Your Conditioning and Be Your True Self. And because this isn't memorized, I'm just going to read you a little blurb. I'll put the link in the show notes. Again, it's totally free. You can listen to it today. So, rewilding is the process of quieting the conditioning and noise so you can meet and befriend your true self and live in a sustainable, soul honoring way. It's not about fixing yourself. You're already whole. You may not recognize that, but I believe that for you. The process and practice of rewilding includes reclamation of your value, your inherent value, and freedom to be who you really are. Reconnection to your inner wisdom and desire, and that includes getting to learn what your inner voice sounds like and learning to trust it, remembering what used to bring you joy or the scattered bits of true self that you may have abandoned along the way. And sometimes we intentionally lay down parts of ourselves for a season. So, for example, if you chose to bring children into the world, you may have needed to lay down parts of yourself in order to give yourself over to raising humans, other humans, and then you can kind of reclaim or remember those parts of you and call them back. And it includes a recalibration as you practice a new way of being in your body and life that is sustainable, soul honoring, and rooted in your agency or power of choice. Every one of us will come to a crossroad or choice point in the middle season of life. And we will need to decide if we want to recommit to the status quo or say yes to becoming our most honest, wisest, brave, and beautiful self. So you can get this training for free. And it will support you in what I'm talking about today, this old self, new self, true self work. Okay, so in this sort of new self phase, you need a lot more you need frequent reminders because what you're really learning how to do here is not run and avoid discomfort. You're learning how to name and be with discomfort. You're learning how to find your voice again. You're learning how to begin to put down roots of self-awareness and self-compassion that really hold you fast. You're learning how to be even more aware of sort of when you get activated and how you behave and even why you get activated. You're learning how to pause, create even a 30-second pause between impulse and response so that you can begin to choose something new. You're learning how to pay more attention to your own body, the wisdom of your body, when it asks you for water, when it asks you for rest, when it asks you for more kindness. There's so much work that happens here, but all of it is not about doing better, being better. It's a paradigm shift. It's actually about learning how to be your true self and be on your own side. Okay, so I think I'm going to circle back to that James Clear quote here. I think it'll make the most sense here. The women I work with are similar to me very often. We we know how to take care of everybody else. We know what it feels like to work hard. We've tried to be good and kind and loving. We've often overfunctioned. We've prioritized everybody else's needs over our own. We might be good at, honoring our commitments to other people, not so good at honoring our commitments to ourselves, etc. And the way that if that sounds like you at all, if you raise the bar on yourself, if you're hard on yourself, if you underestimate yourself, if you have a mean inner critic, or even if it's softening, but you used to have a vicious inner critic, then the way that you approach this new self phase, this sort of becoming phase, you say yes to something new. You want more freedom, more joy, more self-kindness. What happens is you enter this work the same way that you were doing life before. And one of the key parts of this is that you carry with you the fundamental belief that you need fixing. You come in thinking, I'm not enough or I'm too much. You come in believing that even if you never say this out loud, that you're bad, wrong, or broken. You may notice this as feeling never good enough. You try so hard, but life is messy and stuff keeps breaking. People die and people are unhappy with you. And it's like, how am I gonna ever figure this out? You believe that you need a fix outside of yourself, or the way that I used to experience this, I said, I was looking for freedom, but I kept picking up another set of chains. I would go from one addictive pattern to another, looking for something to calm the storm inside of me. But that is not the answer. The answer is not do better, be better. The answer is not bring that old belief and patterning into your healing work, your growth work, your becoming work, because all you're doing is reinforcing those same beliefs and those same self-protective patterns, those same ways of being that tell you that you need to just work harder, do more, etc. So that quote, again, which I love, I'm not disrespecting or devaluing James Clear's work. I appreciate it. I love this quote, in fact. But I want you to see how you might simply be doing more of the same and wondering why the heck you're not changing. Your life experience is not shifting to something more hopeful, positive, loving, or whatever. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Now, again, I'm a systems person, and if you join my work, we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to help you create values aligned, soul honoring rhythm, systems, habits, and practices that serve you, true self you, not former self you who's always trying to measure up and keep up, or former you who is on the hamster wheel, never resting. So if you're in this sort of even the beginning of this new self phase, stepping into a new level of growth, becoming, etc., but you're still operating with those old root beliefs, then your systems, your habits, your practices is still rooted in the belief that you need fixing. You are fundamentally bad, wrong, or broken. That you need a pill, a fix, that there's something that lives outside of you that is going to resolve this inner pain or division. But here, what is really true is that the only systems that are loving and sustainable and soul honoring are those that honor your wiring and capacity, that are thoughtful and rooted in self-compassion, that are deeply connected to a why that is meaningful to you in your body, in your life reality. They're not a one size fits all. They're not just a lovely idea. We're never just jumping on bandwagons because somebody says this is a great tool or idea. We're learning how to pause and examine and question and sift and say, but is this a good idea for me? Will it help me love myself? Will it help me walk in greater freedom? Will it support my body, the season of life I'm in? Will it help me become my true self? Or will it create more distraction, more disconnection? Or reinforce those old beliefs of I'm not good enough. Surely, everybody else seems to have life figured out. So if I do what they're doing, then I'll be fixed, right? Okay, so learning a new tool, like even James Clear's wonderful work, if that's still surface level. Now, I'm not saying that's his thinking because we can never express the fullness of truth in one book, one episode, one blog post, right? That's not what I'm saying. But I do want you to recognize how often you're pulling an idea, a practice, a habit, you're doing a challenge, you're listening to even my podcast and you're efforting your way. You're trying to like do more of the do better, be better. And it's just reinforcing the old patterns. I want you to know this. You are already whole. You are already valuable and worthy. You have permission to love yourself, to rest, to take up space, to say no. You're allowed to be messy and imperfect and in progress, like the rest of us, by the way. So anything in my work that we do, anything, any habit, any practice, any self-talk, anything at all, doesn't matter how much research there is around it, doesn't matter how many people it has supported. Your job, and of course I would help you with this and support you in this if we're, in one of my work containers, but your job is to ask yourself, will this help me love myself or be on my own side? Will this help me practice self-compassion? Will this help me walk in greater freedom today? Will this help me, if you have a vision, if you've done visioning work, will this help me move closer to that vision I have for my life or for who I want to be in the world? Okay, so if yes, great. But otherwise, anything we do in my life visioning course, in my one-on-one coaching, in my Brave and Beautiful community, it must be rooted in it has to support you in being your healthiest, most honest self. Otherwise, we discard it, right? Maybe in another season it worked for you, it doesn't now. Maybe in the future it will serve you. It doesn't matter. What serves you right now is what we want to focus on. So we're only going to focus on systems that are thoughtful and they've been sifted through different layers to make sure that they're there to serve you. You don't exist to jump through hoops. You don't exist. You're not enslaved to other people's ways of being. Okay, that's just more of the same. All right, I need to move on here. So, in this new self phase, very vulnerable, very messy, but here's a really hopeful, beautiful thing. You may not be able to, believe me in this moment. I think it's helpful to truth tell. I don't think it helps anybody to pretend that this type of work is light and fluffy. This work demands something of you. And even on a biological level, like when you're rewiring neural pathways or you're building a new way, you're learning how to interrupt old automatic assumptions and old patterns. It takes work, it takes consistency. When you're learning how to actually love yourself and learning what it means to be on your own side, it doesn't all happen overnight, right? So I think we need to truth tell. But here's another form of truth, another part of truth telling about this is that often in this new self phase, people believe that they have to wait for joy. They have to wait for loving themselves or practicing self-compassion. They have to wait for one day in the future when you resolve all of this stuff and then you're allowed to be happy. Okay, so and that is a lie. That's a myth. Because what's really true is as soon as you say yes to a new possibility and you step into this new self, you actually start to see that everything you have wanted already exists. Now, I'm not talking about stuff or things. Like, so if you are wanting to fall in love and meet a life partner, I'm not saying, well, they do exist somewhere, but I'm not saying that you have access right now. I'm talking about the things that we crave, like more ease, more simplicity, more freedom to just be who we really are, moments of joy and well-being or inner peace. All of these things that are within our power of choice, they're already there. We just don't see them in that old self. It's like we have blinders on. We can't see them. So joy doesn't magically appear one day. Okay, beauty doesn't magically appear, but we may not be able to see it. If we're living with the belief that I'm only allowed to feel at peace in my body and life once I lose weight, stop yelling, um, figure out how to calm or quiet my inner critic, or whatever the criteria are, or if we believe that joy only comes in people's lives where they have X number of dollars in the bank and they have all the material things and all is well and nobody's suffering, then it's not that joy and beauty and kindness and peace and ease aren't already within your realm of possibility. It's that you can't see them and you won't allow yourself to receive them. So, part of the most important work in this new self phase is recognizing this. And that is confronting. It's going to challenge you, but freedom and joy and hope and so much more ease and laughter, they begin to grow right here, as you take one step, as you take a second step, as you take a third step. They come with you, they are your companions. Okay, so you realize, you wake up to the truth that you don't have to wait 10 years or 1 year or for next January to allow yourself to receive joy or well being. You can do that today. Right here in this moment, you have access to it. You have to be willing, though, to let yourself receive it. Okay, I'm going to say one more thing because I know this is getting long, but this is another thing I just reminded myself. So often, what happens, this is another big change that can happen in this new self phase, is that there's a disconnect between, we say we want something, but the truth is you're not willing to receive it. So in this phase, we also learn how to receive. So I already talked about receiving joy, scanning for and recognizing the beauty that already lives in our messy and perfect lives. But we learn how to receive. We have so many blockages around money, around love, And this is also where some of your work is going to be around recognizing where the reason you don't have something or you don't hold on to it is because you don't believe you're allowed to, you don't believe you deserve it, and or there are other blockages, reasons why you don't allow yourself to receive it. So I'm going to end this part of the conversation here with probably an example that you have definitely experienced. How often do you really receive a compliment? Like, or do you just brush it away? Do you justify? Do you say, oh, whatever? Do you point out the imperfections? Or do you let it soak in? Okay, this is so common. And even with women who are so wise and they've been doing this type of work for a long time, and I help them recognize how they're not receiving. They say they want something, more of something, less of something, but they are not actually willing to receive it. So notice this and just start with something really simple like a compliment. If somebody sends you an email with a kind word, they stop you on the street and say something kind to you. If your employer, your kid, your friend says something positive to you, pause and let it soak in and just say thank you. And because you're probably more defended than you realize, you may need to, once you get alone, then spend a few seconds really letting this sink in and notice how challenging this feels to you. Okay, now I want to talk about true self. I'm not going to say too much here because this is already long, but again, we're talking about old self, new self, true self. So there is a point at which, when you've been in these new self waters, where you finally grow into your true self. And it's a really amazing experience. And it doesn't mean the work is done. There's a lifetime of work ahead of you, right? As long as you have breath within you. But there's this knowing or almost a remembering where it's like, oh, I've come home to myself. This is who I've been all along, but there's been so much noise, so many layers of conditioning. And now that you've been releasing and peeling away and shaking off, you've come to this place now where it's like you recognize yourself. And it's this like amazing feeling. And then you lose yourself again. You forget yourself. Because this is a practice, all of this is a practice. We're all simply practicing. But in this true self phase, this is really where now the practice is. Like, we're solid. We have steep roots of self-awareness and self-compassion. We know we are our own best friends. We know how to be on our own side. We may catch sneaky, subversive, old patterns show up, especially if we're feeling vulnerable or weary, but we know how to respond to them. We experience that because we're still stretching and becoming, so we still experience discomfort and feel wobbly. We still need love and support, and we gather in our support systems, right? That doesn't change. We're still human in human bodies in a messy world. We're being brave. We're showing up through discomfort, meeting new challenges, etc., going on adventures. But what is different is we are on our own side. And I'm going to tell you something, and I mean this with every cell in my body. Everything, everything in your life becomes easier when you're on your own side. Everything. Your work, your creativity, your health, your other external relationships, using your voice, meeting hard things, putting yourself out there, everything, aging, everything becomes lighter and easier Not all easy, right? This isn't a fairy tale. Lighter and easier, simpler in many ways also when you're on your own side. So this is a whole new phase of being where you are kind to yourself, where your new instinct is self-compassion, not self-judgment, where you do not live under condemnation or criticism or comparison, where there could be a moment where you recognize an old whisper of shame, but you know how to meet it with kindness and release. Everything changes, but you have to be willing to step into that messy in between. So in this true self phase, we're practicing showing up as our true selves in every situation. And we're practicing being less armored, not masking. We're also learning how much of ourselves do we reveal in different contexts, because being authentic, being your true self doesn't mean everybody deserves all of you. We're learning how to operate in this wise self where ego doesn't need to drive the show because we feel solid and stable inside of ourselves, within ourselves. We're not easily shaken. And this is an incredibly freeing and beautiful place to be. Um, I think I'm done. Yeah, I think I'm done. So I know I could talk about this forever, hence my work. Come join me in my work. If you want to do this work and receive support and create true, sustainable, joyful, loving, respectful, a new, kinder, gentler way of being, new patterns, new systems, new habits and rhythms that are about serving you and helping you show up as your true self and helping you be on your own side. All right. So if you're curious, maybe this is a lot. I've been called a fire hose more than once. But if there is something, even listening to my voice today in this episode, if there is this something in you that says, yes, I need that. I don't even know what that is. I need that. Or a lot of the women in my Brave and Beautiful, well, not a lot, but some women in my Brave and Beautiful community say they were drawn to me because of my seasonal living talk and or even this idea of rewilding. And it's like there's something in their bodies that were like, yes, I need that. But even though their brains are like, I don't even know what that is, but they heard the yes, they trusted the yes, and they took a step towards the longing or the desire. So, an easy next step could be just click the link, go get the rewilding training. Um, It'll help you understand more about this process. And yeah, okay. So, thanks for being here. And I look forward to being with you next week.